Make your microphone green. I guess I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled July 15 Board of Public Works meeting. And starting out with the invocation. Lord, we're meeting today to conduct matters of business, guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right through in speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being the source of today's guidance. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I guess the first item is we would ask Mayor Barry Louderman to install our newest member, Daryl McCoy.
Swear you in.
Okay.
Make it all official and nice.
Okay.
All right, raise your right hand. It says I, name,
I, Daryl McCoy,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and state of Missouri,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Missouri,
and the charter ordinances of the city of Hannibal,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Hannibal,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office,
faithfully discharge the duties of my office,
and that in the appointment, promotion, or discharge of officers or employees,
and that in the appointment, discharge, or promotion of officers or employees,
I will be influenced only by the consideration of fitness, and that in such matters I will act with impartiality and justice.
I will only be influenced by the consideration of fitness, and that in such matters I will act with impartiality.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Just want to see how good he's married.
Trickier on the last one.
Piece of paper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item is the installation of officers, and we do this annually, I guess. And as we all know, there are 4 board members and 3 positions. And we really haven't talked about it much other than just super informally lately.
I have a nomination.
Uh-oh. And?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Wortworth as the board president.
And is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Do we need individual readings now?
Yeah. No, Vice President. Oh, no, we don't need a roll call. We just need another motion.
Oh, okay. And Bill's indicated that him staying as vice president is good. Do I hear a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to nominate Bill Fisher for vice president.
All right, do I hear a second?
Aye.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
So that just leaves secretary. Do I hear a nomination for?
I make a nomination to make Daryl McCoy secretary.
All right, do we have a second?
Wow, that was quick.
3 minutes, Bill. I think
Yes,
3 minutes.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right, the ayes have it. Looks like that part of the meeting's over. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda for this month? Which are bills, payables, claims, and
I'll make a
minutes.
motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, do we have any comments from the audience? I don't think we have a sign-up sheet, but. All right, don't see anybody jumping up there. So moving right along to the general manager report. Please, Derek.
Excellent. You got it. All right, I'll quit pushing buttons. I have 2 items. Number one, for the last 2 months, I've been kind of going through what are the new obstacles that are coming to the BPW and to the utility world. I've gone over PFAS, which is water quality issues. We've gone over the lead and copper rule, which is not only water quality issues, but actually what we're going to have to build and put into the ground here. We're looking at many, many millions of dollars that's going to have to happen. The next one that's coming up is called the Missouri Point Source Nutrient Trade Program. That's a lot of words, but it's something that's been going throughout the nation. I will be glad to give you the 26-page document in and of itself. The biggest thing about this is we do have a little bit of time. And when I say that, we're looking at having things coming by 2028, 2030. What they're doing, and I'm going to give you a very high level, what we're doing is that they're taking and saying that we're going to have to, at our wastewater treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants throughout all of America, they're going to take the two most important elements, nitrogen and phosphorus, and they're going to further stiffen those requirements. Everybody that has a wastewater treatment plant, we have a NIPDES permit, and it's the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Requirement. That's not quite exactly right, but close enough. You have to have that permit in order to put anything into a waterway. For us to put our effluent into the Mississippi River, we have to have that permit. They're going to take from those permits and they're going to take and just drive that standard down from, I believe, around 8 parts per million nitrogen down to 75% of that gone, down to 2 and 3. That's going to be very difficult. But what happens is that every single wastewater treatment plant in Missouri can have 2 ways of doing it. We actually have a bank so that and it's a banking of those nutrients. So for phosphorus, if we're able to take and treat our water better than required, that differential we get a credit for. At the end of the year, we can say that we saved 2 tons of phosphorus. Those plants that haven't done that, they will then be able to come to us and we'll be able to sell that banked phosphorus to somebody else. The problem is it's going to become very expensive. The requirement of doing that, you're going to have to do some changes in our plant for us to meet that requirement. And we still have the engineers looking at it. We've got our consultants, Tony Boone and his company. We're watching it very, very closely. One of the good things that we've done is Mr. Boone and Matt and all of our team, we've actually gone down to the state legislature, actually to MDNR, and been a part of the rulemaking, at least sitting before them and saying, here's what's reasonable, here's what works. I have seen in other states where they say, in order for you to get credit for this, you actually have to go buy land, agricultural land, and let it return to forest land. And when you do that, you'll get X credit for doing this. That can be put into that bank. You can go to microfiltration. You can go to additional pre-treatment, post-treatment. There's all kinds of ways of getting to that goal, but the cheapest way so far is that we're actually going to have to do some changes to our wastewater treatment plant so that we can take and actually treat to make those new standards that we're going to have. Now, I tell you this because in order to make that change, it's going to cost us, depending on what the engineers ultimately come up with, it's going to be multiple millions of dollars. Probably if we were to do a pre-treatment primary sedimentation, that would be about $8 million. If you were to do something like microfiltration at the end, that would be that would be millions of dollars. I tell you that to say that we're going to continue to have to be very careful about our reserve funds, what we're doing with those monies, and that this is another cost that's coming at us. Luckily, our staff were aware of it. We're watching it. We're absolutely involved in it. But that's another one of those things where you've got regulation coming at us without funding. So, wonderful legislation without funding. We're going to have to come up with it. And so that's coming. Again, this is not something we're going to do tomorrow or in the next year. But we're watching it. We're aware of it. And it's another regulation. So,
Do you know
Merry
how many
Christmas.
parts per million of phosphorus is in the effluent now?
I think we're right around 2 parts per million phosphorus. Isn't that about the NIPDES permit requirement?
We don't have a requirement right now. We're monitoring only in advance of this permit or this new regulation. So
What they found in other places, nitrogen is relatively easy to take care of, especially when it comes to an oxidation ditch and our type of treatment. It does really well, but the phosphorus is not as well. You have to have another type of treatment beyond that oxidation ditch to take care of phosphorus appropriately. So it's, that's what's coming.
What is it that we use now? A coagulant or something?
It's that entire process from the headworks, screening, removal of things, to that oxidation ditch where you have bugs, amoebas, bacteria that help break down all of that nitrogen into ammonia, which is off-gassed and removed and taken back to the atmosphere as N, nitrogen. Then it comes to the sedimentation. So it's a very standard process that many other utilities use and take care of. What they look for is that in the Mississippi River, it comes down into the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a great big zone of eutrophication. With that higher nitrogen, nitrogen takes and sucks up, it grows bugs very quickly, which suck the oxygen out of the water, which then kills the water, and you have algae blooms, you have other issues like that. And so this is a nationwide effort. This isn't just here in Missouri.
You said 2028 to 2030?
We've got more things to come. And again, it's kind of, there's a little bit of flux in there because the government can always say, we're going to move this. They've done that a few times on us where they say, we're going to move this up, move this up. There's other states that have already been very active in doing this. Probably the first one's Maryland, Chesapeake Bay, East Coast has been very anxious about it. There's quite a few of them that are ahead of us. And so, but right now, yes, we can at least wait till 2028 before we have to really pull the trigger. But we've got to do some planning. We'll keep an eye on it.
Any expectations, any expectations on when any of the suggestions from the consultants would be out, available?
No, not yet. I mean, we're kind of waiting for that ruling, all the rules to truly settle.
Okay.
They're trying to figure out, they're looking all the way from soil types and what kind of trading you'd have to do with land development to get credits. I mean, this is a very complex issue that they're trying to put into play.
So on top of the lead and copper, I'm trying to remember, was there a number for that?
Again,
Cost? That's going to be an additional cost.
yes, that's a completely different item. So yes, lead and copper, it has its own cost. Remember, just if we were to take our service lines from the main to property line and cutting through roads, cutting through curbs and sidewalks, we're looking at roughly $13.5 million to take those that we believe we have responsibility for today. If we have to go from that property line into the home, which is looking like we'll have to, you're going to take that number and probably make that 26 million, add that to the 13 million, we're looking at almost $50 million just to do the lead and copper rule.
And then this on top of it.
This is a whole brand new thing.
Right.
This is on top of it.
And when was the lead and copper, when was that supposed to happen by?
We have to have an inventory in by October of this year. That is when we have an inventory. That then sets the clock to where we begin having a 10-year window to get the rest of it done. And so
We got a lot of money coming up.
we do. So again, if you're looking at that, if we're going all the way to that property, to the home, if that estimate, and I quote and yell again, estimate of 50 million, 5 million a year is going to be another big lift. It's going to be a huge lift for us. So unfunded mandates. So, second part of my report on that happy note, Merry Christmas. I'd like to share with you real quickly what we're doing this year, this summertime, with some of our projects. I love pictures, and so I'm going to just kind of go through and tell you what we're doing. First of all, one of the projects is our water treatment filter project. Up at the plant, if you'll see over there to the right, we've got there's our, the pointer works. This is a vac truck coming in. We have actually finished 1/4 of this project so far, and this is that vac truck coming in to take out the media from the second one. If you go inside, what they started a couple of months ago, they started taking apart the first set of sand filters so that they could be replaced. And the main and important part is the underside of it. This is that second filter that they're now working on. But you can see that they had put up plastic to protect. There was a lot of work, a lot of dust, a lot of things moving around. So we wanted to protect the other parts of our system. And they did a great job with that. This is where on filter number 1, they came in, and this is a vac truck. And what happens is in a filter, this filter is, you can see there's a gentleman actually standing on the media. There is a undergirding. That's these blocks right here. Those blocks, each one of those is roughly about a 1 foot by 1 foot height and width. And as long as they have some holes in the top, and they allow the water to go into that understructure. On top of it, you see that there is gravel, and then sand, and then anthracite, a carbon material. And what happens is the water comes in on top, it goes down, and all the particulates get caught in between the carbon, into that anthracite. Once that all gets filled, all of that starts to get gummed up with bad stuff, there is this matrix of tubing that runs along the top of all of this, underneath the gravel, underneath the sand and the anthracite. When it gets bad enough, we push air through, the bubbles come up and break up all of the mud that's been accumulated on top. That lifts into the water. That water is then flushed out of the system and gotten rid of. And then once the filter is cleaned, kind of scoured, it's turned back on. The water comes back in from the top, comes down. In order for these guys to get this repaired, the next step was for them to jackhammer out and remove all of those old base collectors. And it was a lot of work. They did a great job. Once it was out, they cleared it up and they painted all the walls, replaced all the walls, coating appropriately. They also took and grouted all of the seams to make sure that they were sealed so that we have no leakage. If you look right here, they also put new all thread. And this all thread is required for the next layer. So right down here, you can kind of see, I'll go to the next one. This is the new media base. These don't have holes. What's nice about these is they're no longer a foot. They're only about 6 to 7 inches thick. What that does for us is that we're going to put them in place, and that actually gives us another several inches of carbon for the filter. So we're going to have some efficiencies. Also on top of this, these have a bunch of, I call them micro slits. They're very thin slits that allow the water to come through. And it also means we don't have to use the gravel or stone that we had in as a base for the old filter. All we have now is sand and the carbon that helps do the filtration. So we're going to have some great efficiency. They took and they put this in the bottom and they bolt it down, and then they grout in between every single one of those. They had to grout it in to seal it, but keeping every one of those micro pores open. They painted everything, they wire brushed everything, they've gotten all of the metal parts in there cleaned up nicely. Then came the replacement of the media. This is the new sand and the new carbon that's going to go on top of that filter. There was a lot of it. It's kind of hard to imagine just exactly the square footage and the volume of what we have, but that's now the filters that we're going through that sand and carbon. And then here it is when they filled it in the first time. If you look in the bottom there, that water is pretty mucky, but what happened is it's just washing out the fines from that sand and the carbon that's been put in there. It was rinsed out, flushed, and not put into our drinking water. So we have high confidence in that. But then it was finally completed. And this is the first of 4. So we're 25% complete. They're now started on the second one. It is tied into our SCADA system. It's operated by the amount of head pressure. As that filter gets fouled, the water goes through more slowly. It builds up more head by the stacking the water on top of it. It knows when to turn on the air. It turns on, washes it out, and it keeps going. They can also do it on hand and often do. And so we monitor it very closely. We're very happy with how it's working. The second item have worked on this summer, as we always do on quarterly, one of the things that you see is the GAC filter, the media change out. This is not a capital cost, this is an O&M cost. But one of the things that's also happening is we've got up here at Riverview Park, we're interested and we want to help the city to make it look pretty and be much better. When we take and change out those filters, Calgon comes in with a semi-truck. They come in with actually two of them, and they're compartmentalized. Part of it's empty, part of it's full. And they come in and they will pull out the old media out of one of those vessels, put it into the empty compartment, then take the new from the full compartment, pump that into the vessel, and it's ready to go. And they come in with two trucks, two semis, at least and sometimes it's different, but for the most part. And so that's how they change it out. And we did this about 2 weeks ago. This cost us about $110,000 to change out this year. But with that, we've got to have room outside that building to turn around, to have them come in. We also have to be able to come around that building to bring in the other chemicals, such as the hypochlorite, such as the polymers that we use, et cetera. So we need to be a little careful, and I'd ask the city as they're looking at that Riverview Park, be sure that we keep that radiuses and those turn areas open to us so that we can continue to operate like we should. At the wastewater treatment plant, we have a clarifier rehabilitation going on. There is our oxidation ditch there to the left and behind the office. This is the clarifier number 3. As you can see, to begin this work, we took it offline, drained it out, and then they came in with sandblasting machines and everything, all the scrapers you could think of, and they took all of the metal inside that clarifier to clean it up. This is one of those things you seldom see, but with all of you can see the rust on the pipes, you can see the spotting and things that are going on. They went in, they sandblasted it, and then they painted all of the metal parts. And so it already looks much, much better. What's unfortunately is that we'll fill that up with effluent and you won't see it again. But we need to keep it there so that we have maintained, and it's got another 20 years of life in it at least. Then what's the second part, we're only halfway through with the project, is that if you look inside of here, you can see where this cement, the concrete itself has been washed out over time. The water has removed it, but the aggregate that's inside the concrete has stayed. What's the next step is, and this is the way it looks not just here, but on the inside of that wall, all the way up and down, that we've lost some concrete there. We're coming in with a polyurea coating, and the best way I can explain that is it's kind of like a truck bed liner. If you've seen people that have that spray in, it's kind of a thick plastic. That's what we're going to be putting on. It'll be very smooth, but it's going to take and fill in all of the gaps and protect and maintain that aggregate. And again, give us some longevity in this clarifier. We plan on doing the other 2 later on. This is the first of 3. So we're moving forward with that. Also at the wastewater treatment plant, for your information, we've got some oxygen generation that we've got to redo. This is the feed of oxygen to that oxidation ditch. It's very important. We use pure oxygen. To the left, and I'm sorry, didn't get you a picture of it, we have 2 what are called, for all intents and purposes, are generators. They are what collect and isolate the oxygen, put it into the system then goes in and feeds the bugs. We have one of them that has failed. We've been fighting with them for about a year now, They have been in operation for about 12 years. So they're coming to the end of their life. We are expected for that. We have gone and gotten a rental, and this is helping taking care of it. And our guys, again, kind of done a great job of hustling, getting it put in place, making it work, and it's saving us a lot of money. If we have to buy liquid O2, that is several times more expensive than the rental. We anticipate, we have purchased 2 new of those generators. They're about $160,000 a piece. No, 180, so 360,000 is what it's going to cost to get this back and operating like it should. But we have done all the work for the last 12 years, again, coming into our reserve fund so that we can do this without any impact to our ratepayers. We also have a high water. With this, we are operating the floodgate down here. This is what takes all of the storm water, comes in on the Hannibal side of the levee. It comes to this catch basin here. It also has all the pumps, etc. We take and we close that gate, which in normal usage allows the water to come in and out and flow by gravity out to the river. When the river's high, we have to close the gate, and then there's piping that goes through the levee to the river, and then we force pump that water out to the river so that we stay in, no matter what, to take care of the storm water as it flows. And our guys watch the river. We coordinate very closely with the city and Andy and with the emergency response, and we keep that running. Again, Matt and his crews do a great job. We're also working on the Bear Creek Dam spillway. This is what the dam looks like. This is the valving inside the dam that we are responsible for. We have a telemetry that helps us know what the level of the dam and what the valve opening is for that. This was just a couple months ago when we had a lot of rain. It caught up with us. But we are also, this is the outfall. If you look straight ahead and a little to the right is where General Mills is. And we had it opened up so that we could get rid of it. We were opening it up, and Matt again, put everything on Matt. He's Superman. He takes and makes sure that downstream, the Mississippi isn't having problems. All of our bridges from Ely and all those others, that we're not putting them underwater or anything like that. And so we got rid of that water from behind the dam so that it's safe. But this is not the project. The project is the spillway. This is the dam up here. This is General Mills and all of this work. The spillway comes out here and then flows down Bear Creek. Hope I got that right. Yeah, I think I did. Close. Right through here, through here. The spillway is way over here. And this is I believe. And what happens is, if this water were to back up and get so high that it might come over the top, if it came over the top, it would quickly erode the dam, and we would have a mess. It would be bad. It would wipe everything out. But what you do is you have a spillway that is the low point, that before it comes over the dam, it's going to come here, around, and then hit the creek and come on down. What the Army Corps of Engineers and MDNR said is that this was once dug out, 50 years ago, maybe more. When this was first built, this was probably 4 feet deeper. The sides were engineered and cut in. These sides were engineered. They're pretty darn close to where it was originally built, but they're saying we've got to maintain it, and we've got to take and dig out all of this and move it. We have a grant for $500,000 that we are managing, and Matt, again, is the lion's share of the work, and his team, and this is going to be cut out and moved. We're going to go out to bid probably September, have a contractor come in to be able to move all of that dirt. But that's what we're looking at. And you saw those piles of trees down here. That's what happened to help clear out this bottom area. We burnt it a couple of months ago, and MDNR and the Army Corps were happy with the work we've done, but we're working with them to move that forward. Indian Mound Substation Replacement. We are working on this project. The Indian Mound Substation has been there a very long time, and the transformer that's in there has some significant problems. One of the things that we check it every single year. One of the things you do is a transformer is a great big box that has lots of coils in it. It gets hot and you have it in oil. And if you were to ever have any moisture get into that, it would turn to steam, it would blow up, it would be very, very, very bad. So we actually put nitrogen or a inert gas into it and keep it pressurized so that it's always pushing air out. We're pushing a lot out because those seals and the things that are around it are getting old and older. We need to make that replacement. We have purchased that new transformer, and it is another right around, 50 weeks or 40. It's still a year away from us getting the transformer here, even though we've already purchased it. We're going to be building that on new property right here. Bill Fisher, thank you to Lowe's. We purchased this land in here from Lowe's, and we're going to be replacing this substation this side right here. Again, we've got a lot of pre-work that's going on. Jared and his team are doing great. The engineers, BHMG are helping us, and we're making that project move forward. We have the Oakwood to Southside tie line. I don't have any pictures because what we have done is we've gone out for a grant through MPUA and some other utilities, and we're waiting to see if we get a grant that will help us to complete that. That is to complete the tie line of our entire system to give it a complete loop feed, which will improve our reliability even deeper than it is now. We're doing a cured-in-place pipe project. What this is we've already gone out, and what a cured-in-place pipe means is that you take all of the old pipe, and what we do is we're doing this with sewer pipe. In general, you do it with sewer, although you can do it with water. That's a little more rare because it's difficult to isolate and keep something offline that long. But what they do is they take a sleeve of fiberglass that's impregnated, and then they take and they put it into the line. Then they force either air or hot water into that line, and it fills up that sock, pushes it against the wall of the old pipe, and then it cures in place. And it makes it solid. One of the issues that we are aware of, and we've asked our contractor to be careful of, is that that steam and stuff smells just like fiberglass. It's hard, it's kind of rough. But you'll see steam coming off. You'll see them pushing that. What we're looking at doing is all of the 12-inch and smaller sized pipe, our sewer pipe from South Main, kind of all the way up Bear Creek. These are all areas that are in the floodplain. We have a problem that's called I&I, infiltration and inflow. So if we have a crack in the pipe, we actually have that groundwater that's coming into the pipe that then goes down the pipe to our wastewater treatment plant. We believe by completing this, we're going to be able to reduce the amount of flow coming into our wastewater treatment plant significantly. I won't give you a number because you're guessing right now. Our contractor has come through and cleaned all of it. They have videoed it. We have gone back, and there's places where there were breaks that were significant enough that we needed to go dig them up and replace them, and then they will come through and do the lining. We're going to have to wait for the river to come down, but probably we see maybe in a couple of weeks they could begin. We're looking at over 8,000 feet of pipe.
Does that pipe currently flow wastewater
Yes,
from like south side or?
yes. Yeah, it's flowing. It's just like, you can see all of those green lines, or all the lines that are touching it. That's where those are the mains that it's serving. everything uphill from it. We do have the lead and copper rule. We're paying attention to that. Our sampling for the lead and copper rule itself is every 3 years, and we just now hit our 3-year mark, and so we have customers out there today that will be helping us with that sampling. So we thank them and appreciate that. We still have the PFAS rule that we're watching and being aware of. Inside the office, we don't want Paul to think he's not remembered, or we know he's just taking it easy in the air conditioning. We have an IRS audit that's going on currently. They have 80,000 new auditors, and so they need something to do. So what they've made a priority, I believe, is anybody that has a bond that's coming up on that 5-year mark, there's certain things in there that if you've taken and not handled that bond appropriately, there's penalties, and if you've made any money on it and you haven't reported that because of the change in funding or refunding, you have to get it. We've turned in all that information. Paul has done a fantastic job in doing that, and we await whether they have more questions or if it's all good. And thank you to Paul and our bond counsel that's put all the paperwork to respond to that. It was no small lift. We are also at end of year closeout. July 1, what's our? June 30th, July 1, that's our new fiscal year. We just started. And when that happens with 3-year accounting, you've got to stop and start, and all of those things have to be finished up. And so there's quite a bit of extra work that goes with. It's not just a normal month or month and a half for him to get that year-end closeout. And it's not just him, it's all of his team. We also have a cost of service study with UFS. It's a utility financial services. He's also got to provide a mountain of information, all of our financials, and it's when you add that up with your closeout, Paul has been hustling, and he's always happy, but sometimes you want to leave him alone. It's okay. That's about all we're doing so far. Other than that, and
Not much going on, huh?
keeping the lights on and keeping the water flowing. And any questions?
I just have one.
Yes.
With cleaning out those basins, I think you call them, and you may not know, is that going to maybe let the GAC filters last longer?
Yes, absolutely hope so.
Okay.
So one of the things with those GAC filters is when they change them out, we lose about 20%. So they take that carbon, they take it back to their shop, they cook it, they put it under intense heat, and they take and volatilize all of those particles and all of those elements that carbon filter has absorbed. But in doing that, they lose about 20%. So we end up getting we have to buy new media to
Right.
replace that 20%. Now, it's part of the contract so far, but if we can reduce that, it'll improve the water quality, which is already great, but it'll help there. But it'll also have perhaps less of that carbon will be disappearing, which will help us. And maybe we can actually lengthen that out a little bit. So the better we treat those carbon the GAC, we anticipate some savings and a return on investment there.
So on the spillway, when you're digging that 4 feet of dirt out, I guess you'd consider it topsoil?
Yes?
Didn't know if the industrial park might need some topsoil spread over it because it's pretty much nothing but clay.
We will. That's a very good point. We'll look at that. We do have a farmer or a rancher or landowner right next to it that we're hoping that we can, because fuel cost, anytime you're hauling something, the shorter distance is what we're looking at. But that's
But I didn't know if it was going to be considered, hazardous material.
That's a good question.
Of
Please
course,
don't.
when they dredge, they consider it hazardous, but
You're absolutely right.
topsoil has just been accumulated over the years. I can't imagine it would be considered, but
Funny DNR lets you do that for the spillway. It gives us crap in the city when we want to clean out Bear Creek to drop it back down to the original depth.
Unfunded mandates, what?
Yeah.
Bill, you still there? Yeah, the light's still lit.
I am still here.
All right. Good stuff. All right, any questions of Darren's report? Haven't heard none, I
No,
guess.
I don't have any.
Okay. If we could move on to Mr. Munslinger's operation report, that'd be wonderful.
Good afternoon. As you'll see here in the electric report, we got quite a few outages associated with birds and squirrels. Jared's really aware of this, and so he's working with his crew to identify areas where we can make improvements. And over the next couple months, we will be hopefully reducing that number. Even though the number of outages went up over those in May, our reliability number actually went up because of some old outages that have come off that 12-month rolling average. You'll see in the water treatment plant production numbers on page 2 of my report that the number of water produced for the month of June actually increased. We should have good numbers at this point because we replaced all 3 outgoing meters, and so it's something we're continuing to watch as it relates to our water loss. As Darren alluded to, we did have change out of a couple of GAC vessels, our quarterly change out. We also had some manufacturers reps in doing some annual maintenance on our monitoring equipment. Had to deal with the high river levels, and then we also hired a swing shift operator, which now makes that plant fully staffed again. On the water distribution side, the crew replaced a small diameter main with 1,000 feet of new 2-inch main. They did that all in-house in a matter of about 4 days. And so that is a big accomplishment for them. It also retired some old lead services that were as part of that old main. And then they continued to work on addressing fire hydrants that needed to be changed colors or repainted as a result of the hydrant flushing that we had done in the previous months this year. Wastewater treatment plant, you can see the numbers have dropped off a little bit from May. That's mainly due to lack of rainfall, comparatively speaking. We are still up over June of 2023, and that is due to the higher river level and that I&I that Darren alluded to. Wastewater collection, we didn't have any SSOs. We had 2 stop-up calls, but they were not on us, so that's good for our claims as it relates to insurance. And the crew continued to work on addressing our hot list or areas of known problem areas. We could try to run them every 6 months in hopes of catching a problem before it causes a customer any issue. Then you'll see technology related. We continued to improve, replace, and become better with our technology, and all in an effort to provide good customer service as it relates to metering or any other facet of our utility, but also we have to do that in order to keep ahead of the intruders trying to get our data. That's a big thing, and so something we're continuing to spend money on. And that's all I've got as far as the operations report.
Anybody have any questions of Matt on that? Hey, Matt, I do have a question. When you're doing the repair in place on the sewer lines, what do you do with the sewage while you're doing that?
You talk with the customers who are on that affected portion and try to get them to limit the water usage. Then if it's a big flowing main, they'll actually pump or plug off the main and pump around it. Mm-hmm. That's why we're only doing the 15-inch or 12-inch and smaller this time. Yeah. We've got a second phase of this project where we're doing 21-inch to 15-inch, and about the same amount, it's going to cost about $500,000 to do that lining, but then it's going to cost an additional $500,000 in just the pumping cost, mm-hmm. because you have to have the amount of pumping there in the event you have the biggest flow on that main at the time. So we're looking to span a couple years with that and get that all done relatively quickly so that we're not having to remobilize.
Cool. All right. No other questions about operations? If you could move right into projects, please.
Well, Darren gave that for me, so
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
a few things that we've got to discuss. Water loss, again, it's something that we're continuing to work on. Alex will be meeting with Gordon Eden to go over the monitoring that he's been doing for us and reviewing the data that he's been collecting, and also talking about where we go from where we're at now to into the future to help reduce that loss and keep it as low as possible. As Darren alluded to with the lining project, it is being postponed right now until the river level goes down, because right now with the I&I, all those mains are sitting full of water. And so when the river recedes, we will pick up where we left off there. It has also affected the clarifier rehabilitation project. Because we do have those higher than normal flows at the wastewater plant, it's hard to pull that clarifier offline. And so we've had to put it back in service. And once the river level goes down, we'll be able to take it offline, pump it out, and get the contractor in here to complete that. Just a small update on North Street. Again, phase 1 up to the old bridge approach. It's under contract with the contractor. It will be construction will start after the 1st of September. Phase 2, which is roughly from the old bridge approach up to 5th Street. We've reviewed 70% design plans on that and provided comments to the design engineer. Because it is ARPA funded, we have to bid it out yet this year and get it awarded. And then phase 3, the city council approved an engineering contract with PSBA to complete the design of that. That is earmark money, and so it's a little bit different. There are really no time constraints on it, but the process is the city has it designed. They turn that design over to the Corps of Engineers, who then do a letter report. They get the money requested from the federal government. They get that money, then they'll put it out to bid, and they'll actually do the construction management of that 3rd phase, which is somewhere around 5th Street. We're hoping to get it all the way up to near Grand Avenue, but we'll see what construction costs will be on that. And then Bear Creek Dam spillway rehabilitation. We've got 85-90% complete plans on that. We reached out to the Corps of Engineers and Missouri Department of Natural Resources to get their comments. We had some good conversation with MDNR regarding it, and our engineers working with them to finalize those plans. It is on the ARPA schedule, so we have to go out to bid August, September, and get the contract with the contractor in place by the end of the year. Then it doesn't have to be actually constructed until about the middle part of 2026 is the requirement on that. So, the Indian Mounds replacement project, we've got a lot of the long lead time items ordered or purchased. We're working our way up to the shortest lead times. We're working with the design engineer to finalize the footprint, and then we will go out to bid for a contractor to actually do that civil work and get the site prepped for the arrival of the transformer.
All right. Any questions of?
Some of those ARPA bids that are intertwined with the city, is that something that you guys will tackle here at the board as far as like doing the bid process on that? Or will the city handle that? And then also, like you mentioned, manage the construction phase of it too?
We've been working with the city on project management aspect of it. The finances and stuff is all because the actual ARPA award is in the city's name.
Right.
It has to come through them, so it has to go through their process. So like none of the three phases are the same. The Board of Public Works had PSBA under contract to design phase 1 before ARPA was even thought about. And so the Board of Public Works is paying for all the engineering of phase 1. Phase 2.
Pre-ARPA money.
What's that?
They're paying for all phase 1 pre-ARPA money, you said, right?
All phase one design, engineering.
Okay.
ARPA's not reimbursing any of the phase one engineering because we had that contract in place before ARPA.
Sure.
ARPA is paying for the construction, the actual contractor constructing phase one.
Okay.
Phase two, because we received favorable bids on phase one and we hadn't designed phase two, PSBA actually has a contract with the city of Hannibal for the design of it. Because it was approved after the ARPA award, ARPA will reimburse the city for that design or all that engineering associated with phase two, and then also pay for the construction of phase two.
Okay.
Phase three, it's up to the city to design it, to pay for the design, and then I think it's a 25% cost share for that $3.5 million.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
I have a question. Since our source water is the Mississippi, and with it being high, does that affect our drinking water at all? The numbers or the?
A little bit. It affects GAC a little bit because the TOC levels may be elevated. It depends on where it gets the rain and what that rain or what that river water is carrying. It's something we continually monitor. We make tweaks to our treatment process. We add chemicals at the pump house to help some of that stuff settle out and not carry over. But as you're pulling that much water through, that you'll have some carryover, and it's something we're working with our staff to help optimize because the source water, like you said, changes on a daily basis based upon where the rain fell, what river it comes down, and what the river level is. So
Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse.
Right.
And so that's why you have operators that monitor that, watch it.
but as far as the water quality, we still meet drinking water standards. We're not having any issue with that.
Okay.
It just affects our chemical usage and the life of our GAC, or maybe a filter backwash.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And on to Paul with the financial report, please.
Alrighty, financial update for June. You've got the internal financial statements there in front of you. Starting with the balance sheet, compared to last month, we did have a slight increase in cash. We kind of consider every month either as a shoulder month or a non-shoulder month. Shoulder month would be a month where we don't expect sales to be quite as high. Think March, April, October, November. So now that we've gotten out of the shoulder months and into May and June, when the weather gets a little bit warmer, we tend to see cash increase a little bit as our sales rise. We did also have a significant increase in current assets as we paid our annual MIRMA insurance premium. We'll record that as a prepaid expense and then expense it out monthly as the year goes on. Also had an increase in accounts payable. All of our items that we received in July but were related to June services, we record those on an accrual basis, and so we record those back to June, which is why accounts payable was a little bit up. So utility-wide total assets did increase about 1% from a month ago and are down about 2.8% from a year ago. Looking at the income statement for the month of June specifically compared to budget, like I mentioned, it is budgeted to be a positive month for us financially with sales being higher, and that did turn out to be true for the electric and water funds. The electric fund did benefit from lower purchase power costs than expected, and our net income came in about $327,000 more than budgeted. And the water fund came in about $80,000 greater than budget. The issue with the sewer fund and its lower net income for the month was due to liquid oxygen. Darren mentioned it. We did have some issues with our compressor that we've really been fighting for the past year or so. And any time that we have to go out and purchase additional liquid oxygen, it's more expensive, which is why we now have the generator in place to hopefully alleviate that expense until those new compressors do arrive. Next page would be our income statement compared to a year ago. And so we did fare better, much better this year than last, and that was primarily due to the electric fund. Revenues were up about $300,000 in electric, and purchase power cost net were down by about $150,000. Specific unit sales of kilowatt hours were up about 3.1% compared to last year for June. And year to date, so we talked about it, June does mark the end of our fiscal year, and so the data that you have in front of you is preliminary. Like Darren mentioned, we've got several adjustments and closing that still needs to be done before our fiscal audit. But the numbers there are preliminarily what we would see for the fiscal year 2024. And so net loss, total utility-wide net loss is $806,000, which was compared to a budgeted net loss of $19,000. So quite a bit worse. The electric fund didn't quite see the revenues that we had budgeted. Those finished the year about 4.5% behind, which translates to about $1.2 million. The water fund did have a solid year financially. It came in close to budget in pretty much every single category. And the sewer fund came in under in about every single category. A lot of that was due to the issues that we saw with the compressors. So compared to last year, we did have a better year this year. The utility-wide net loss was slightly less. Obviously, the electric and water funds did see increases in revenues, which was due to the rate increases that we passed last October. However, the electric fund did recognize nearly $4 million less in Prairie State MISO credits. If you look back earlier at Matt's operation, to Darren's report and look at purchase power costs, you can see that really throughout the year we stayed right around $30 to $40 a megawatt hour, which is pretty stable pricing when it comes to paying for our purchase power. If you compare that to last year, we had months where we were hitting $85, $95, $65, and so pricing was all over the place. Well, when that happens, we're able to sell our Prairie State power at a premium because what we're paying for that is consistent, and so when we can sell it back into the market at a higher price, we do get a benefit from that. And so when prices are more stable, we don't quite see the same benefit from selling that Prairie State power. And so those credits did come in this year about $4 million less than what we saw last year. That's really it for the financial statements. If we scroll down and look at the dashboard there on page 23, I did want to point out that we are at the end of our fiscal year. Our electric fund does show a debt service coverage ratio of 0.02, which is well below the requirement of 1.25, and so we will be in default for the second year in a row on that ratio. So I want to be very clear that, like we talked about with our budget, we will have a significant rate increase in electric to get back into compliance with that debt coverage ratio requirement for next fiscal year. The auditors will obviously do an official calculation on where we're at with that, but we do have a budget in hand for next fiscal year that gets back into compliance with that coverage requirement after the rate increase that is projected for October. I think that was really it. Again, we have about a month and a half before our audit, and so we'll continue working on compiling all the information for them and getting that ready to go before the auditors are here the first week in September. Any questions on the financial report for June?
Paul, generally speaking, lower purchase power costs generate us less MISO credit.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's kind of ironic, because obviously the base rate that we're paying for our purchase power would be less because the market price is lower. But like I mentioned, what Prairie State is generating, and the excess that we're selling back into the market, is also being sold at a lower rate.
Yep.
And so those credits that we're getting back aren't as high when prices aren't as high.
All right, anybody have any questions about Paul's financial report?
Paul, we still looking at the same percentage increase on the electric rate for the next year?
Yeah, we, the budget has about a 15.8% increase in it. The average customer, residential customer, would be about a $26 a month increase in their electric bill. But that's the budget that was approved.
Okay, that's the percentage I was remembering. I just wanted to make sure it hadn't gone up. Thank you.
All right, anybody else have any questions of Paul? All right, you got anything else?
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving right along, we have a special guest, Maria Coombs with HREDC. And you're here to kind of give us a state of the nation, I hope.
I have my phone here, so I'm watching the time. I know we're after 5, so I'll be efficient. Good afternoon. I believe most of you know me, and if not from speaking at BPW, but in other areas. So I'm the executive director at Hannibal Regional Economic Development Council, have been since August of last year, so about to reach 1 year, but I've been with the organization for a little over 3 years. A little bit about Hannibal Regional EDC. It was originally organized in 1984 to promote growth and investment in Hannibal. Our current mission is to provide assistance to new and existing businesses in the Hannibal region that will help them sustain, grow, and excel. We are a 501c6 organization, which means we are membership-based, and we're governed by a 13 to 21% person board based on funding. That's how it's laid out in our bylaws. And much of what I'm talking to you guys about today is laid out in some of the materials I gave you, but this is just a little bit more of a high-level overview. A little bit about my background. I'm originally from Illinois, ended up in Missouri at Mizzou, and met a boy from northwest Missouri, and we've been trying to live in between our family farms ever since. But my undergrad's in ag business, my master's in ag econ, but my passion for this work really started when I studied rural development. And what drew me to Hannibal was the potential that it has, really based on all of the different assets that I see in this region. And I stand by that 3 years later, when I originally looked at coming to run the Small Business Development Center, which is what I did prior to this. It was very obvious to me that there is so much potential, so many great assets, and so many great things going on here. So I'm very appreciative to work in an area of the world where we have some really great dynamics when it comes to economic development. So I said that we're a membership-based organization. Our largest members are the municipalities that we serve. So obviously, the Hannibal Board of Public Works. We're a regional organization. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but that means that we do serve the city of Palmyra and have contracts with Marion County and Rawls County Commission. Hannibal IDA also pays us. And we have about 50, a little over 50, between 50 and 60 private industrial members. As members, you obviously fall into different tiers based on your level of investment. As a public member, public members are allowed up to 3 board seats. And the Board of Public Works has 3 board seats on our board. Matt is our secretary and treasurer. Darren is on our board, and then Paul is on our board as well. And we're very appreciative of Paul because despite not being an officer, he does help me do the budget every year. So if you have any questions about our budget, I'll answer them, but Paul knows them almost as good as I do as well. So we have all of our public partners represented on the board, as well as private partners like Hannibal Regional, Hannibal Clinic, banks, and utility partners like Liberty, Northeast Power, Sheraton Valley. So those are also in that packet as well if you'd like to go through our complete list. So I mentioned we're a regional organization. This is very common for economic development organizations like us to cover a larger footprint than a single municipality or a single county. We actually perfectly align, representing Marion and Rawls, with our census designated area. So the United States Census Bureau defines the Hannibal Micropolitan Statistical Area as Marion and Rawls, anchored by the city of Hannibal as our core population base. Whenever the Census Bureau defines these regions, with a micropolitan status, that means we're between 10,000 and 50,000. But these are areas that have a high degree of social and economic integration. So, and this is measured through commuting ties. So by us being tied to that region, we are able to get a broad look at the labor market, at commuting inflows and outflows, so that we are servicing our companies with kind of a broad picture and preventing kind of getting our blinders on to where their workforce may be coming from and vice versa. So in those two counties, we see things like workforce, housing, transportation, all heavily integrated. So when you think about economic development organizations, and I should say that it is very common for economic development organizations to be outside of a public entity. And that is because it opens us up to be a little bit more flexible than municipalities or utility providers often are. So many of the economic development organizations across the country are laid out that way. But the number one thing that EDOs are known for, and what we were first and foremost sort of created for, was this idea of recruitment. And so what that is we are constantly selling our region. So as you all know, we have the Lakeside Technology Park here in Hannibal. We are constantly putting that out for promotion. And on a day-to-day basis, the way we do this is through something called requests for information, or RFIs. So currently right now, I'm emailing with Matt. We're working on an RFI, as we call them, where a company has approached the state of Missouri and said, here's our specs. This is what we're looking for. What sites do you have? And so I actually go through and fill out all of the information needed for the industrial park and submit that. And so we did submit Lakeside, and now a week later we found out that they liked our site enough to come back and ask for additional information. So I'm working with Matt on that right now. But this user that we're working with on this particular RFI has upwards of 10 to long-term 20 megawatts of power. So these are high generating users that can positively impact utility usage. So the other thing we do is we maintain Location One site software. I'll show you a screenshot of that in a moment. We host virtual and in-person site visits whenever folks come to Hannibal to look at our sites. We attend trade shows and visit conferences across the nation. We do print and digital marketing, and we also have a site selector toolkit. So we're incredibly progressive in our office in regards to technology, especially with the website and Location One. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Some of the more print media that we have is in your packets in that folder. And some of the places that we travel include Community Venture Network. I go to Minneapolis 3 times a year to talk about Hannibal. International Council of Shopping Centers in Las Vegas to talk about retail opportunities. We go on trade missions, and we go to regular site selector conferences as well. Site selectors are third-party consultants that work with industrial companies to look at potential for expansion and where to expand. So they're kind of a go-between that we work with a lot. So this is our website. Just like the BPW website, it is hosted, and the city website, and the chamber website. It is hosted by Vervocity. And I love that we have that consistent platform across the community, because that way if people end up at one of our websites, they all have a similar feel. It shows that we're all working together. But one of the key things about our website is that drop-down menu over there on the left, which is the site selector toolkit. On average, we have about 3,000 visitors to our website each month. And from that, I'm able to see that one of the most popular subsites that we have is that site selector toolkit. So what that tells me is that people who are coming to our website are looking at Hannibal as a destination for industrial manufacturing. So the website is kind of I call it like a behind the scenes, but it's very important. And I think that we do a great job, and Verbosity makes sure that we are very high on the search bar list, so that we stay circulating. We also maintain a Facebook and a LinkedIn page as well to catch people on those platforms. So this is an example of Location 1, which is the economic development database that lists industrial sites throughout the United States. As a user of Location 1, we're able to kind of brand it, so you can see it has our brand. It has some of our sites. I've put up here the one for Lakeside. If you go to details, you can actually see a lot more information about the utilities, things like that. And then from there, you can print brochures. So the brochure you have for Lakeside is in there as well. So you can also generate Esri reports, which is very helpful. Esri provides workforce population data, so people who are curious are able to pull data on the region within that database. So that's a very, very high level of our recruitment. I will say that that took a whole lot of information and shoved it down, so I'd be glad to answer more questions. But the other probably more key thing, and it's less exciting, but probably more important, to be honest, is retention and expansion. So I like to say that economic development recruitment is the sales department, while retention and expansion is the customer service department for the community. So we go out, we visit with our large employers, our key employers, and we ask them questions that get at how is the community doing in regards to basically being the community where you're located. So we ask about roads, we ask about utilities, we ask about workforce, we ask about healthcare, we ask about first responders. So we're really collecting information on any areas that might be exceptional or also a pain point, so that our municipalities and utilities are aware of that as well. So why do we do this? As much as it's important to grow our economic base through recruitment, it's even more important to take care of our existing economic base, right? And oftentimes some of the biggest successes, the biggest opportunities for growth come from your existing businesses. And so we do spend time on that. So besides checking in with them, we do have committees that kind of use that information and figure out, okay, now what do we need to do to help with whatever pain points they have. So we do have a workforce development committee and a transportation committee. Two focuses of the workforce development committee are housing and childcare. We also are currently undergoing we're working on content for a marketing campaign geared at workforce. So the biggest pain point that I hear from our employers at this point is that there are not enough bodies to get the work done that needs to happen. And so what we're really focused on is telling the story of why Hannibal is a great place to live, as apart from being a great place to do business, because we really think that there's a lot of quality of life here, and we want our workers to know that. So not only are they staying, but we're also, we have content to show those that might be locating here, whether it's engineers at BASF, doctors at the hospital, even plant workers over at General Mills. We want them to feel like where they're living has a very high quality of life. On the childcare front, this is a very dire need. Housing and childcare both are, but we're working on a childcare needs assessment right now to truly quantify what kind of childcare is needed throughout the two counties, so that we can begin problem solving and see how we can provide better access to that. We do have a transportation committee that meets monthly to talk about transportation needs. Two big things that have come out of that. Well, one big thing would be, we've been very heavily involved in promoting the idea of Amtrak to Hannibal. So Brian Ross, who is the state specialist or the state director for passenger rail at MoDOT, attends our monthly meeting and discusses Amtrak opportunities and keeps us up to date on the current study that's going on. So we do talk with Brian a lot to provide the local input on making sure that happens. We care very much about the success of the airport. I serve on the airport advisory committee and very much enjoy that. And then we also have the Port Authority, which I'll talk more about later. So some affiliate services that we do, and what I mean by that is when we work with an outside consultant or specialist to kind of multiply the impact that we can have as a 3-person staff. We do have a consultant that helps us with retail. We do maintain a lobbyist that works on our behalf in Jeff City. We retain a legal counsel or a lawyer who prepares incentive letters and proposals. So if I work with a municipality that chooses to offer an incentive to a business, we work with legal to figure out what that looks like. I mentioned verbosity, and then we also regularly invest in economic data and analytics, especially workforce reports, because those are very, very important when we're doing recruitment and retention, because those manufacturers want to see what the economic data is, what the workforce is, and how that interacts. And so we do pay for those and keep them up to date. I have a couple of those in your folders as well. So I talked a little bit about affiliate consultants that we work with, but another thing that we're able to do is maintain memberships at both state and federal level that give us representation and economic development with the state and then across the U.S. Two that I'll point out specifically, just because it might not be clear from the title. The first one on there is the Hawthorne Foundation. This is the foundation that actually is both publicly and privately funded that allows the state to have a business recruitment focus. So we have Missouri Partnership is the name of the organization that does business recruitment for the state as the whole. And they Hawthorne Foundation is allocated money through the state legislature to give to Missouri Partnership to do that. But they also take private funding as well, and so we do pay into that so that we stay abreast as to what's going on at the state level. Additionally, Missouri Northeast, just because I don't think you captured in the name, this is a group of the economic developers in about the top 16 Northeast counties in the state of Missouri. So we're very active in that. We'll be holding the annual meeting here in Hannibal next week. So those are more traditional economic development opportunities, but I also wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the things that make our Economic Development Council a little different than others. And the number one value add that I feel that we have is our Small Business Development Center. I may be biased because this is what I did for 2.5 years before I took on the executive director role, but I really think that this is probably one of the most impactful thing that we do day to day for our existing businesses. So the other cool thing about this is it is a 50-50 match grant. So we're able to use our local funding to then go out and get an additional, we're able to double that to host the Small Business Development Center. Through that, we provide no-cost counseling and consulting to businesses with under 500 employees. And I'll tell you, in our 2 counties, there's probably maybe 10 businesses that excludes, and I'd say that's on the high side. We do keep a full-time business counselor. His name is Sean Freeman, and that is his full-time job is just providing those services. So we do a lot of business plan building. We help them navigate all the steps that it takes to start a business. We, help them navigate really any aspect. We host trainings. We're constantly working with our businesses. So over the 4 years that we have had our Small Business Development Center in Hannibal, we have served over 250 businesses. So we're very proud of that. It's about 100 businesses a year, which is pretty awesome. On top of that, we do take entrepreneurship one step further. We feel that entrepreneurship is a very key part of economic development. I call it like homegrown economic development, right? These are the people that work in your community, they're on your school board, they're your neighbors, they're loyal to Hannibal, and we want them to stay here and grow their businesses here. So we've created Ignite, which is an entrepreneurial ecosystem. When we think of ecosystem, think about all of the components that something needs to flourish, right? So we are creating an environment through monthly events and programming so that entrepreneurs feel supported whenever it can be very isolating to be an entrepreneur or a small business owner. The other somewhat unique, but is sometimes seen from EDOs is administering a port authority. So traditionally, Marion County has had a port authority. It was a board, didn't hold any land. And so back in 2020, we were able to form a regional port authority for both Marion and Rawls. And this is actually a separate political subdivision. So it has jurisdictional authority in both counties. And we oversee that as an administrator. So that has a separate board. We have a contract with them, and we provide executive director services. But really what the Port Authority is focused on is development and multimodal. So we did purchase a site in West Quincy in 2022. I'm really proud to say that in the span of 2 years, we have received over $2.5 million in state and federal funds through that Port Authority. So the Port Authority is a terrific vessel for pulling funds back to the region. Just because we have the site on West Quincy does not mean that we are limited to staying there. We always have the opportunity to expand to other parts of Marion and Rawls as well. But again, just something that does a great job of getting those state and federal funds local, which I think is terrific. So, reaching the end here, I just wanted to go through some successes. Obviously we do a lot of work. We work really hard, and we want that to correlate with successes. And anybody who's spent time in economic development knows it's a long game. It takes many, many years sometimes to see large outcomes. But some of the projects that we've assisted in offering incentives and economic development services is Jones Poultry across the road, which was $7 million and 50 jobs. Doyle Manufacturing in Palmyra, which was $6 million and 50 jobs. A consolidated machine and welding expansion, which was $4 million and 30 jobs. And then prior to my time with the organization, our organization has been very instrumental in bonding for some big projects in the city, including 2 General Mills projects, 2008 and 2017. There were Chapter 100 bonds offered for expansions there. In our office, ran point on that, and then the Hannibal Regional Campus was bonded as well, and the EDC assisted with that. So those are kind of the more job creation, high dollar projects, but we also, like I said, feel very strongly about supporting our small businesses. So just some of the 3, I should say with the Small Business Development Center, we are not able to discuss those projects. We are tied to confidentiality just because as a small business, you don't want people finding out that you're working with a consultant or whatever else. So the 3 that I have up here have signed a waiver saying that I am allowed to share that we worked with them. But these are just 3 of our more recent ones that we've assisted in getting off the ground, the Coffee Barn, the Quarry House, and Langhorne Meats downtown. And then I do want to put Coons Properties on there because that was really born of the need for housing that we see. And so we were able to get a Quincy property company to put in apartments here in Hannibal. So that was a great success in regards to just a crucial need. And lastly, for the sake of transparency, I did want to give you guys some of our budget numbers. We're pretty forthcoming, even though we are a private organization. We do adhere to sunshine. So if anyone comes in our office, they are more than willing to see any of our agendas, financial statements, things like that, because we do receive public funds and we want to honor that. So you can see this is our forecasted revenues for this fiscal year. So like the Board of Public Works and the city, we do run a fiscal year of July to June to just be consistent with that. And here's about what we'll bring in this next year. There will be some small grants or investment income, but apart from that, we run about a $350,000 budget. Now, very high level, I'll give you what our expenses look like. So you can see here that I am incredibly proud of the fact that we really stretch your dollars as far as we can, and we do a good job of it. We employ 3 full-time staff, and we are able to keep overall operations, rent, supplies, telephone, insurance for our office at $30,000 a year. So if you think about that, that's less than $3,000 a month to keep our office open. Additionally, we do have a travel budget because I am going to all of these events. So between meals, airfare, gas, vehicles, all that, we're at about $25,000 a year. Those contract services that we're able to provide as a value add, the lobbyist, the legal, the accounting is 20, and then marketing and memberships, we see at 30 and 14. So the reason I show this is because occasionally we get asked, like, okay, so your budget grew this year. What happens there? We directly increase our ability to market. So if I receive additional funds, that in turn gives me further ability to digitally market, to make more flyers, to attend more events. So that way, whoever is putting in that dollar amount is further able to have a larger presence. So we operate lean on those first few categories so that the money that is given to us is really spent on the marketing, which is why we exist. So that's pretty much all I have. I'd be glad to take any questions. In the inside of the folder, you have my business card. My cell phone number is on there. Feel free to text or call me, but I do love questions. And I do have 3 board members here, so you can talk directly to them if you'd like. Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Maria, can you tell me what Missouri IDA is?
Missouri IDA.
Hannibal IDA, sorry.
Yeah, so Hannibal IDA is the Industrial Development Authority. So anytime you do a bonding project, the IDA is actually what offers those bonds. And I'm not an expert about this, but it has to do with municipalities and their ability to offer industrial bonds. And IDA kind of takes that one step away from the city council, and so that's why they have that. And they generate revenue through bonding fees.
Thank you. All right, appreciate it. Very informative.
All right, I'll stick around if you guys have any other questions, but feel free to give me a call if you ever have any questions or any areas you'd like to focus. We always love to get your input. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Looks like moving right along. Do we have any comments from the city attorney?
Not today.
Nope. Okay. All right. Any other general discussion? Having heard none, I guess I will make the motion to go into closed session pursuant to section 610.021.112 of the Missouri Sunshine Law. Meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss litigation in contracts to admit board members, Darren Gordon, Matt Munslinger, Paul Trenhill, and Courtney, and attorney. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, you can turn your.
Aye.